Chapter 1. Rain always made Min Jae nervous. The city he left behind never felt warm. Even during summer, the streets looked gray. Everyone walked too quickly. Everyone looked exhausted. Min Jae used to spend his nights sitting beside the tiny apartment window listening to sirens and wondering why he felt so empty all the time. That was why he moved. Hanyul Bay was different. The small seaside town smelled like salt water and flowers instead of smoke. The waves sounded peaceful at night. The streets were quiet enough to hear the wind through the trees. Min Jae rented a tiny apartment above an old bookstore near the harbor. The floors creaked. The heater barely worked. But somehow it already felt safer than the city ever had. Still, loneliness followed him everywhere. On his second night there, a storm knocked out the power. Min Jae groaned quietly before grabbing his phone flashlight and heading downstairs. The bookstore below glowed softly with candlelight, and behind the counter stood someone beautiful. A young man with soft black hair and silver earrings carefully arranged flowers beneath the warm light. Min Jae froze. The stranger looked up calmly. "Oh," he said softly, "you're the new tenant upstairs." His voice sounded warm enough to melt winter. Min Jae forgot how to breathe for a second. "Yeah," the stranger smiled faintly. "I'm Elias." Min Jae swallowed hard. "I'm Min Jae." Elias handed him candles without another word. Their fingers brushed briefly. Warm. Min Jae immediately pulled back. Sorry, you apologize a lot," Elias said quietly. Min Jae blinked. "Do I?" The rain echoed outside while candlelight flickered around the bookstore shelves. Then Elias tilted his head slightly. "You look lonely." The words caught Min Jae off guard. Not rude, not mocking, just honest. Min Jae looked away quietly. "I just moved here." Elias studied him silently for a moment before nodding once. "Well," he said softly, "you don't have to be alone tonight." Something inside Min Jae's chest hurt unexpectedly, because nobody had said something like that to him in a very long time. Chapter 2. After that night, Min Jae kept finding excuses to visit the bookstore. At first he blamed the weather, then he blamed the coffee, then the books. But eventually, even he realized the truth. He came for Elias. Every afternoon after college classes ended, Min Jae wandered downstairs carrying snacks from the convenience store nearby. Sometimes strawberry milk, sometimes buns, sometimes warm tea. Elias always accepted them with the same soft smile. One evening, Min Jae entered the bookstore soaked from rain. Elias immediately frowned. "You forgot your umbrella again." "I didn't forget it." "Then where is it?" "At home." "That means you forgot it," Min Jae grumbled quietly while Elias disappeared into the back room. When he returned, he held out a towel. Min Jae blinked. "You keep towels in the bookstore?" "You're not the first person to get caught in the rain." Min Jae carefully dried his hair while sitting beside the counter. The bookstore smelled like coffee beans and old paper, comfortable, warm. Home, that thought startled him, because he hadn't thought of anywhere as home in years. Elias glanced at him quietly while organizing flowers. "You're thinking too hard again." "How do you know?" "You always stare at the floor when you're overthinking. You notice too much." Elias smiled softly. "You're easy to read." Min Jae's ears turned red immediately. To distract himself, he looked around the bookstore shelves. "Do you read all these?" "Mm-hmm. That's insane." Elias walked closer before pulling a novel from one shelf. "You'd like this one." Min Jae accepted it carefully. Their fingers brushed again. His heart betrayed him instantly. Elias noticed the reaction immediately but said nothing. That somehow made it worse. Later that night, rain hammered against the windows while Min Jae sat cross-legged beside Elias on the floor. Neither of them talked much. But strangely, silence around Elias never felt awkward. It felt peaceful. Min Jae realized something terrifying then. He didn't want to leave. Not the bookstore, not Elias, maybe not ever. Chapter 3. Weeks passed quietly after that. Min Jae slowly became part of Elias's daily routine. He helped to organize books, watered plants, fed the stray cats outside, Sometimes he even fell asleep in the chair beside the counter while Elias worked late. One evening, Min Jae woke up with a blanket draped carefully over his shoulders. Elias sat nearby, reading beneath warm yellow light. Min Jae stared at him sleepily. "Did you cover me? You looked cold." Min Jae's chest tightened painfully. Nobody had taken care of him like this before, not gently, not quietly, not without expecting something in return. Elias looked up from his book. "You drool in your sleep," Min Jae gasped in horror. "I do not. You do. You're lying. I have evidence. Delete it immediately." Elias laughed softly. Min Jae loved that laugh more than he should. That realization scared him, because Min Jae understood his own feelings now. He liked Elias, not casually, not temporarily, completely. And honestly, that terrified him. People always left. Min Jae learned that years ago, the idea of wanting someone this much felt dangerous. Still, he couldn't stop himself. Not when Elias smiled at him softly every morning. Not when Elias remembered his favorite tea. Not when Elias waited outside Min Jae's classroom on snowy evenings just so they could walk home together. One night, while closing the bookstore, Elias suddenly asked quietly, "Why do you always look sad when you think nobody's watching?" Min Jae froze. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The truth sat heavily inside him. He swallowed hard. "I got tired." Elias waited patiently. "The city was exhausting," Min Jae whispered. "Everything felt empty all the time. I worked constantly, studied constantly, but somehow I still felt invisible." The confession felt embarrassing, but Elias didn't laugh, didn't interrupt. He simply listened, then quietly said, "You're not invisible to me." Min Jae nearly cried right there, because Elias sounded sincere, and maybe that was the scariest part of all. Chapter 4 Winter arrived slowly in Hanul Bay. Snow dusted the sidewalks while warm lights glowed inside the bookstore every evening. Min Jae loved winter here, especially because Elias looked softer during cold weather, oversized sweaters, red ears from the cold, sleepy smiles while holding warm coffee cups. Everything about him felt unfairly adorable. One evening, the town festival filled the streets with lanterns and music. Min Jae hated crowds. Unfortunately, Elias insisted on dragging him outside anyway. "You spend too much time hiding indoors." "I like indoors." "You're becoming part of the furniture." "That sounds peaceful." Elias laughed before grabbing Min Jae's sleeve gently. "Come on." The festival glowed beautifully beneath the snow. Children laughed while fireworks lit up the harbor sky. Min Jae stayed close beside Elias instinctively, too close. At some point their hands brushed, then Elias quietly intertwined their fingers together. Min Jae froze completely. Warmth exploded through his chest. Elias looked calm. "This way you won't get lost." Min Jae stared at him in disbelief. Oh. His heart pounded violently for the rest of the night, but Elias never let go, not during fireworks, not while buying snacks, not while walking home beneath glowing streetlights. And, honestly, Min Jae didn't want him to. That night, after returning home, Min Jae couldn't sleep. His heart still raced every time he remembered Elias's hand holding his. Careful, warm, safe. For the first time in years, Min Jae found himself smiling alone in the dark, and somehow, the loneliness inside him finally felt smaller. Chapter 5. The confession happened during another rainstorm. Of course it did. Rain had always followed the important moments in Min Jae's life. The bookstore lights flickered softly while thunder echoed outside. Min Jae sat beside the counter pretending to read while secretly staring at Elias again. Elias noticed immediately. "You're staring." "No, I'm not." "You definitely are." Min Jae hid behind the book dramatically. Elias laughed quietly before walking closer. "You've been acting strange all week." "I always act strange." "More strange than usual." Min Jae's face burned. Because Elias was right. After the festival, everything felt different. The hand-holding, the lingering eye contact, the soft smiles. It all felt dangerously close to something more. Min Jae lowered the book slowly. Elias. Mm-hmm? If I tell you something embarrassing, will you promise not to laugh? Elias looked surprised. Okay. Min Jae's heart pounded painfully. Then he whispered, I think I like you. Silence. Min Jae immediately panicked. I mean, not like casually. Well, I do like you casually too, but also romantically, and wow, that sounded terrible. Elias suddenly laughed softly, not mocking, warm, fond. Then he gently reached forward and held Min Jae's trembling hands. You really are easy to read, Elias whispered. Min Jae blinked rapidly. What? I like you too. The world stopped. Rain echoed softly outside. Min Jae stared at him speechlessly. You, you like me? For real? Elias smiled softly. For real? Min Jae immediately covered his face in embarrassment while Elias laughed again, and somehow that moment became Min Jae's favorite memory forever. Final chapter spring arrived quietly after winter passed. Flowers bloomed outside the bookstore windows while warm sunlight filled the shelves every morning. Nothing changed, and yet everything did. Min Jae still visited the bookstore every day, still complained dramatically about college assignments, still stole Elias's coffee, still overwatered his cactus upstairs. But now, Elias kissed his forehead goodbye every morning before Min Jae left for class. Now they walked home holding hands openly. Now Min Jae fell asleep beside Elias almost every night while rain tapped softly against the windows. The loneliness that once followed him everywhere had disappeared quietly somewhere along the way. One evening, Min Jae sat beside the harbor watching sunset colors spread across the ocean. Elias sat beside him silently, comfortable silence, the best kind. Min Jae leaned gently against Elias's shoulder. Thank you. Elias looked down at him softly. For what? For finding me. Elias smiled faintly before intertwining their fingers together. I think, he whispered, we found each other. The ocean breeze carried the scent of flowers from the bookstore nearby. Warm light glowed across the water, and for the first time in his life, Min Jae felt completely certain of one thing. He was finally home.
Join my Discord for early access to videos, link in description.